Are the workers in your business allowed to steal your clients? Find out in this week's Conscious Counsel podcast episode. Hi there. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Conscious Counsel podcast with your host, Cory Sterling. That's me. I'm here to share super fun and interesting information from the legal world as it relates to health and wellness professionals. And as always, the promise that I make to you is that I'm here to help you protect and grow your wellness business with confidence and clarity. I love what I do. I love getting to be a lawyer for such amazing health and wellness small business entrepreneurs just like you. And I also love having the ability and the privilege to share the experiences of the stories that I go through with my clients and record them on this podcast so that you can understand what goes on in my inbox, and you can also understand really, really important concepts that will help you protect your business and to grow your business with both confidence and clarity. So without further ado, in this week's episode, I'm talking about being able to protect your clients from your staff. And the impetus for this episode was an experience that I went through with one of my clients who has a small Pilates studio in Miami, Florida, and has a few instructors and a very, very full schedule. And this client was basically held hostage by the employee / contractor, which is another question that we'll get into, where the instructor basically said, hey, give me A, B, or C. And if you don't, then I'm leaving. And when I leave, I'm going to take all of these people with me. Because the very common predicament for studio owners is that you're not teaching every class, and you have an amazing team of staff who are able to provide the services and teach the classes, and then members get attached to those teachers, and then months and months and years, the members become very attached to working with that particular teacher. And if the teacher goes to a new studio, a lot of the times the clients will follow suit, and this really obviously scares a lot of studio owners. And so legally the questions are, one, are you able to prohibit a worker from taking your clients? And legally, the answer first and foremost comes down, there's one question that it comes to first. The first question is, are they a contractor or are they an employee? If someone is a 1099 independent contractor, it will be very, very difficult for you to be able to restrict their ability to work with whoever they want. The whole idea of an independent contractor is you have your business that does something, and you bring in a professional to execute and provide the services that your business provides. But the person you're bringing in theoretically should be running their own business. And part of running their own business means that they also can work with whoever they want in whatever projects, and that you're not allowed to restrict it. Now, if someone's a 1099 contractor, it's going to be very difficult to restrict their ability to work with clients. However, if they are an employee and they have a substantial salary that they're earning, it is possible to restrict this type of activity, but it's also going to be difficult to enforce. And the reason why is you can put in non-competition, you can put in non-competes, you can put in non-solicitations, you can put in all of these provisions that will help protect you. But at the end of the day, if a teacher just stands up in their last class and says, hey guys, thank you so much, I had such a great time teaching at the studio. Or if you have a coaching business and one of your coaches is doing this, hey, I've loved working with you. I'm going to, I'm leaving to another place, or I'm starting my own thing. It was great to meet everyone. If the students come up and they voluntarily reach out to the instructor afterwards and say, hey, you're leaving? I really want to work with you. I loved working with you. Then there are situations in which case legally that is permitted. It's always going to be a gray area. It's always going to be something that's difficult to enforce. But the most important thing to remember is that firstly, if they're a contractor, you can put it in the contract, but it'll have no weight. And then secondly, if they're an employee, you can try to restrict them working with your clients or soliciting business, although it will be very, very difficult to actually enforce this. Now, the remedy always, and this is one of the most common problems that I come up against in my legal practice and working with clients, I always tell clients on calls, it's like, look, legally we can put in these provisions in the contract and we can enforce them. And if we find out that one of the teachers is leaving and has solicited the members of your studio or your coaching clients or whatever it is, okay, we can enforce it and we would have decent legal position to get what it is that we want. but it's always really about the sense of community that you create at your studio and in your business and how people feel connected to you and your business. So as an example, for me as a lawyer with Conscious Counsel, I've had many other lawyers who have worked on the team. And sometimes people will say to me, oh, like, aren't you scared to put your clients in front of other lawyers and that maybe they'll take them? And first I say, like, if people are not having a good enough experience working with me and my brand, they want to work with someone else, like, I get that. And people should go where they feel comfortable. And secondly, what I really focus and work on is creating an amazing experience with the brand and an amazing experience working with the business and the company. And when you take care of that, everything takes care of itself. And so in a situation, I'm going to tell you a story in a moment, but in the story that I went through with my client, we're talking about all these legal hypotheticals and situations and how can it unfold and everything that's taking place. And the first thing I said was like, look, legally, I've got your back and we can do what we need to do in this situation. But I think it also makes sense for you to invest in the culture of community that you create with your members so that they're connected to the studio and they're not connected to an individual teacher. And I think that it's hard because as an entrepreneur, especially as a studio owner, there's so many balls that we're always juggling. And it's tough to know, it's tough to focus on this and the scheduling and the new hires and this and that and the other. But with all of the things going on, you always want to have the customer experience to be a primary focus of what you're working on and something that you're always trying to improve, getting feedback from clients. How can we be better? How would you love it here more? The situation that I passed through recently with the client, which is exactly on this topic, was not such an agreeable situation. And it's not such a positive situation, unfortunately. But in this case, there was one variable that made things challenging for my client was that she did not have employee agreements signed. And so what ended up happening was there was some issue with the teacher, and the teacher then threatened to take all of the students. And when on the call, I got my client into an employee agreement and into an employee handbook. So we drafted it for, and I was like, look, moving forward, everyone has to sign everything all of the time. But in this case, there was no signed agreement. And the teacher was like, okay, cool. Well, legally, I never signed a contract with you, so I can just go and take whoever I want and build my own business with it. And technically, she's right. There was nothing signed between the parties about a non-solicitation, about a non-compete. There was nothing agreed between the parties, and this person had worked for them for a couple of years. And I know when you're sitting and you're listening to this, you're like, no way, this stuff doesn't happen. But it's true. People have businesses, have studios, they have team members, and they just don't have customized industry-specific agreements that are signed and executed and that they can rely and lean on. And so in this situation, it was actually tricky because we had to do a fair amount of negotiating with the employee to come to some form of deal and figure out a way forward. And then in exchange for whatever we agreed to, the employee also agreed to sign an employee agreement that had all of the terms. So in the end, we were able to come to a resolution, but it cost my client a lot more money than it should have. And it's a head scratcher of how you can run a business and not have the signed agreements and not have everything executed and protecting your business and your clients. And so it's just one of those situations. The reason for me that it's such great content for a podcast episode is because people probably think like, what? You don't have a signed agreement? You'd be surprised at how many of my clients don't have signed agreements, even though they have successful, thriving businesses. And number two, the legal issues of, restricting someone's ability to take your clients is often a legal question first. And the questions that will come up is, are they contractors or are they employees? If they're employees, have they agreed to it? Is their salary at a threshold where we can actually enforce these provisions? When you have the contract signed, everything's easier. And that's why I'm in business. That's why I work with health and wellness professionals, because I want you to be able to stay protected. I want you to navigate issues with ease. And if we have the signed agreement from this person, it'd be like, cool, here's the signed contract. You're not allowed to take anyone. If we find out that you do, we reserve the right to bring a legal action against you, plus damages, plus fees, plus everything. And then it's over. And it's like my job as a lawyer, and so many of the stories that I share are the same story. But it's always like, if you have the legal documents set up properly from the beginning, when you run into an issue, everything will be much better for you. It'll be more cost effective. It'll be simpler and you're going to use less mental energy than the situation that I went through with this client. Who was like, it was a week from hell for this client without the signed agreement. They're afraid that they're losing half of their members. And like, that's not a fun feeling to have. And even if just having legal documents, even if it's not about having strong legal position and communicating expectations openly and honestly, it is about peace of mind. And that's the name of the game. So in this episode, I talked a little bit about the question, can you restrict your workers from stealing your clients? The answer is yes. The first question is going to be, depends if they're a contractor or an employee. That will have a consideration. And then secondly, do you have the specific signed agreement that you have with your team and that you're working with? And if you're able to manage those things and have those boxes checked, then you're in a position that, okay, let's say it comes up, you are perfectly prepared to deal with it. The situation arises. Hey, Cory, this is the situation. Here's the signed employee agreement. You had this employee sign. When are you free for a consult? Awesome. Here's the membership. Let's chat and then work through it and resolve it and get results for clients. So that's what we love doing. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope the information is relevant and helpful. You can always just find us on Instagram at Conscious Counsel. Shoot me a message if you have any questions or anything that you're curious about. And whatever it is that you do, make sure you work with a lawyer who loves you. Peace.